Election night in America continues here in the state of Oklahoma and right here in the Oklahoman's video studio. Dave Morris is the 8:30 version of our election coverage tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in throughout the night. You can watch live on newsok.com or catch the on-demand version as we post each of these live segments later. You can watch on the big screen outside in downtown Oklahoma City at Sheridan and Robinson. You can find results online at newsok.com, including interactive maps, photo galleries, and videos from earlier in the day. Joining me now here live in the studio, Ben Felder from the Oklahoman, and pleased to be joined by Oklahoma Senator A.J. Griffin, State Representative Jason Dunnington. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for your time.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, you two started the day on local radio at KOKC, and you continue the media tour by joining us here at the Oklahoman. How'd it go this morning?
This morning was a lot of fun. I spent from 6 till 9 a.m. this morning hosting that local news program. Had Representative on with me for an hour. Also had Congressman Cole on. We had a great morning. We also visited with the chairman of the Republican Party in the state of Oklahoma, Pam Pollard. So just kind of setting up for the day. Got started before the polls even opened.
Best thing about radio though was we didn't have to dress like this.
No.
So.
But you're always dapper. You're always one of the most stylish guys in the city, Jason.
Well, thank you.
What were you hearing this morning on the talk radio? What was the buzz, and how has that perhaps changed throughout the day?
I think there's a lot of optimism on both sides, usually on election morning, and that seemed to be the case this morning. And just talking with colleagues, talking with campaign managers from races in rural Oklahoma all the way into urban Oklahoma. Obviously now results are coming in, and some of the air is getting let out of those balloons. But we'll see how some of these races end up. There are a lot of still really tight races that we're following. So,
does it feel good for you guys to be sitting here versus at a watch party?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. Of course, the representative, they're up every other year, but I'm in an off year because we have our odd numbered districts that were up this year in the Oklahoma Senate. So I got to just work on other people's races, which is not quite as stressful as working on your
And no
own.
opponent for you this time.
No opponent this year. So 2 years ago, won by 22 votes, and that was definitely a stressful evening.
Did you go shake those 22 hands?
Yeah.
Well, what are you two watching tonight?
Well, I'm watching the Oklahoma Senate numbers come in. We had 19 races during this cycle, and it looks like our candidates on the Republican side are faring very, very well. But it's interesting. One of our best conversations this morning was about kind of the changing demographic in Oklahoma, how our state kind of lags behind many of the other states in just the way that we shift our population between the urban areas and the rural areas. And I think we're kind of seeing some of that with the numbers that come in. Of those 19 races, 17 of them look like they're solidly going to go to the Republican candidate. But the two that are still in play that we aren't really sure what's going to happen are kind of a sign of the shifting demographic in the state of Oklahoma.
Yeah, definitely paying attention to. We had 11 of our House Democratic caucus members that termed out or decided not to run again. So we had 11 of those seats that we were hoping to protect, and then obviously looking to build on top of that for this evening. So following those 11 races very closely right now. A few have gone our way, which is good, and then still plenty that are too close to call right now. But the hope for House Democrats was to expand on the 30 members that we had, and with the top of the ticket the way that it is, as far as the federal level in Oklahoma, it makes it really difficult for Democrats down ballot. And so how turnout ends up in both rural counties and urban counties will probably be really indicative of whether or not we meet our 30 threshold again and gain, or if we slip back a little bit.
Well, Senator, you talked about that kind of geographical makeup of the legislature right now, and that trend. It seems like the Republicans are growing in the rural areas, and they still have some strongholds in the urban areas, but Representative, you and I have talked about just the Democrats are trying to expand their footprint, especially in Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. Even though the majorities aren't up for grabs, I mean, this is going to be a Republican-controlled, a supermajority for the Republicans going into the next session. How does that shift in which districts are represented? How does that influence what takes place at the Capitol, do you think, with Republicans having that kind of suburban, rural base versus urban base for Democrats?
I think one of the big differences it'll make is when you see cities like the city of Oklahoma City and city of Tulsa, as they start to look at what's going on in the legislature and how it affects the cities. A lot of these preemption type bills that have been passed through in years prior to this, I think you'll start to see the cities then lean on more of that Democrat kind of majority in the urban areas to see if they can't walk some of those things back. So, you know, in some ways, the city's working in tandem with the more Democratic caucus members that are that hold majority of the seats in those urban areas. I think you could see that. I mean, we already have, as with State Question 777, I think there was an article today in the Oklahoman about this, you know, rural-urban divide and how it's playing out on that question in particular. And I think, you know, we'll likely see more of that moving forward.
And another area is, of course, the hottest topic of our conversation this year has been education. And part of the issues that we've had in education is reforms that were based around the needs of the urban area, but not necessarily meeting the needs of the rural area of the state. So this should set us up to have, for the first time, some actually genuine conversations about the needs of all Oklahoma schools, and not necessarily some of these policies of the past where we were pitting the urban schools versus the rural schools when it came to funding and policy and those types of things. So hopefully it's a shift kind of in the right direction, and we will begin to have the conversations around education that we really need to have.
Yeah. Well, races for Republicans are kind of, you know, circled as an attempted flip, and for the Democrats as well. What are each party's eyeing right now?
We've certainly eyed a number of seats here in the Oklahoma City area. So House District 87, that was formerly Representative Nelson's, was one that we've really spent a lot of time and energy on. House District 93 on the south side, formerly Representative Christian's, is another that we've targeted as one that we think that we could pick up tonight.
And I'll butt in right there. State Rep District 93, Mickey Dollins, 56% at this point.
Okay, great. So that's good as far as energy that we've put in to pick up in more urban areas. So we obviously following our colleague closely tonight, House District 85 in the Cindy Munson race. Before we came on here, she looked like she had a pretty steady lead.
She's at 54% roughly. Okay,
in that seat. So. Maybe for the viewer, they think, 54, 55%, it sounds so close. In our world of politics, if you're at this stage in the evening and you have 54%, you're pretty happy. Yeah. So that's a good thing. Those are the two of the kind of targets that we've had here just locally.
Well, and we had, of course, holding the two seats in Little Dixie in the southeastern area of the state with the Senator Boggs and Senator Silk, trying to hang on to those two seats that are not traditionally in our hands at all. Of course, targeted the seat in Ada that was vacated when Susan Paddock term lifted out, and it looks like that one is well in hand by Greg McCourtney. He's doing very well there. And then there were two seats we had hoped to look at picking up in the northeastern. 62%. Yeah, McCourtney's doing very well. And then in the northeastern area of the state, two that we are not traditionally our seats as well, that were vacated by Senator Charlie Wyrick and term limited by Senator Earl Garrison. One of those looks really good. The other one's still kind of in play. Then, of course, we're seeing the shifting demographic in the Tulsa area, and two seats. The Newberry seat, which is always a marginal seat. Senator Newberry has to work really hard to hang on to that one. And
52%
then, of course,
at this point.
We had the open seat vacated when Senator Crane term limited, that Dave Rader's in that seat as well. So looking at that one, it looks pretty close on that one. I don't know that we're going to hang on to that one, so we may actually drop a seat.
Boy, that is close at this point, within 200 votes, 50 to 49%.
And that one's one where you had a Tulsa teacher who's running for that Senate seat as the Democrat, John Waldron.
Yeah. In the midtown area of Tulsa that has a big shift in the demographics. It's a little bit like the midtown area of Oklahoma City, where the average age and population has dropped considerably since redistricting. So I think as we approach the time when we'll redistrict, we'll begin to see those shifts. They'll play out now, and then of course again in 2018 when we go through that cycle, we'll see that shift again.
Yeah. I just got an update for some friends. It looks like that we've held on to the House District 92 seat, so it'd be Forrest Bennett replacing the outgoing Representative Morset. And that race got very contentious here in the last week or two. A lot of negative mail that came from the Republican side of that race. and really peeled off numbers here. So it was one that we had some angst about this morning, but it looks like that we've pulled that seat out. And then
Forrest Bennett sitting at about 61%, but again, total votes cast 581 at this point.
yeah.
Still early. It's early
Well,
in the
you
evening.
talked about, I know you were eyeing the Senate. One of the things interesting to me is on the House is the eastern part of the state. Because we've got, I was circling before we went on here, a handful of seats, 6 or 7 Democratic-controlled seats right now that are open races without an incumbent. Talk about the opening that provides when you have a seat. I mean, the power of the incumbency is pretty large in Oklahoma, but when you have an open seat, it seems like it provides an opportunity for the minority party to step in, right?
It definitely provides an opportunity, and we'll see kind of a look at other numbers after this cycle's finished today. But one of the things on many of the House races is there was quite a significant amount of money spent in some of these House seats, both from candidates and then from outside groups that were spending money, and a lot of that was chasing that open seat just because there were so many of them this year. And when they're clustered like that, especially in eastern rural Oklahoma, there is a general sense that if you could get momentum in 1 or 2, you might be able to sweep 3 or 4 or 5 of them. So it was something that we were definitely paying attention to out there. And then you have the contentious House District 2 race that Representative Bennett has, certainly put his name in the both local and national media here recently on a number of different issues. And that race still hasn't been called. So
We'll really start to see the impact of term limits. This is the first cycle, and then of course when we go through the 18 cycle, whenever we begin to have elected officials that start and end their career under term limits. So that forced turnover will cause us to kind of shift things around a little bit, and it does provide opportunities for the minority party, I think, that would not exist otherwise.
Yeah.
Did you guys decide you would sit on the right, he would sit on the left when you guys joined us here on the news desk, or it just worked out that way?
We do this a lot. You also notice he's wearing blue and I'm wearing red, so.
there you go.
As you might guess, the Republican and the Democrat State Senator A.J. Griffin representing District 20, and State Representative Jason Dunnington, District 88, I believe, correct? Guys, thanks so much for sitting in. Ben Feller from the Oklahoman as well. We'll be back at 9 p.m. with another live update. One thing Oklahoma declared for Donald Trump, and one of the storylines we were following tonight is, would he win all 77 counties? And at this point, that appears to be the case. Hillary Clinton topping 40%, as our Chris Castile reports, only in Cleveland, Oklahoma, and Tulsa counties. We'll be back at 9 p.m. Thanks for tuning in.